Good day, everyone. Welcome to your Self-Help Quest. I'm your host, Joshua Melissus, and joining me today is Dr. Lisa Hall, who is an associate professor in the psychology department at Missouri State University. Dr. Hall, thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So, I guess what kind of what do you study in your field?
Yes, so I am a sociologist. I'm in a psychology department and I coordinate the gerontology program. So, in other words, I consider myself to be very multidisciplinary. And gerontology is the study of aging, and we're all aging. So many people think that gerontology is only about older adults, but we do look at the entire process of aging across the life course.
So I guess, how can we improve our chances of having a larger lifespan?
Yeah, okay. So, medical technology, eradicating most communicable diseases. I say that in the era of COVID, but those things have already expanded our lifespan. So maybe the real question is something that we're now calling health span. How do we increase our health? How can we be healthier for a longer part of our lifespan so that we don't spend the last third of our life ill, sick? Health span. This is more about quality of life. So some ways that we can do that, it's multifaceted. We're used to hearing, diet and exercise, eat well, exercise. But some of the things that are equally as important would be social aspects, having a good support group. It would also be, we used to say spiritual a lot, but it's probably not the best term. A better umbrella term would be like transcendentalism. Like how do we as individuals fit into the universe? How are we connected to others? So yes, it might be your traditional, what church do you go to? What religion are you? But it could also be, what is your moral code or your ethical code? It also could be, and this is some of the latest and greatest stuff in psychology, is mindfulness and intentionality. So there are a lot of things that we can do to improve the quality of our lives. And if we create good practices earlier in life, then of course that will have an accumulative positive effect throughout our lives.
Is meditation like a part of mindfulness?
Yes, I think so. Reflection and meditation, it's all part of mindfulness and intentionality. We hear this popular advice, live in the moment, live in the moment. And I understand that. Usually we're told to live in the moment because maybe we're too worried about the future or because we are regretful of something in the past. But I think to truly be in the moment, if we develop these habits where we carve out time in our day to reflect on things that have happened earlier in the day, yesterday, last year, then we have a better chance of being content, being peaceful with ourselves, and then we are able to think about the future. I always tell my students, begin with the end in mind. If you can visualize what might be in the future, you're less likely to be shocked when something negative happens, and negative things always happen. It's just that we don't schedule those into our calendars, right? We never do that. And we have a little more sense of control over our future. So yes, mindfulness and intentionality is all about carving out that time, again, to be able to reflect and to take some good information and lessons forward. And then if we can visualize what we want for our future, we'll be less shocked and unprepared for it.
picturing the end it's a good mindset.
Right, right. And I like to tell my students that if it's an assignment, think about what you want that final assignment to look like. What's an ideal outcome for this assignment, for this paper, for this project. But it also works, of course, when you're thinking about living your life. And if when you're 20, you can imagine yourself being 80, what do you hope how do you hope you feel at that time? Even I almost made the mistake of saying, what do you hope you've accomplished? Americans, Western culture, we are so much about doing, accomplishing, checking off a task list, that we don't spend enough time being and figuring out who we are. And so, again, going back to mindfulness, meditation, those things help us be rather than just get caught up in the haste of everything, fast-paced life, which also, by the way, when we practice being, we also are more able to live in the moment, make the most of the present.
Yeah. And I reflect.
Good.
Pretty much like every day now, because I have a thought diary app on my phone, and it's just really good because it makes me feel grateful for my life and kind of realize just how lucky I am at this point.
Right.
And in a way, I guess what you're saying about aging, it's kind of like you have to be respectful for your future self.
Yes, I like the way you put that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to be respectful of your future self. And unfortunately, again, in America and in Western society, we are not always respectful of older adults. They don't exactly represent some of the things that we most value. Again, in a fast-paced society where we really value strength, youthful beauty. So if we, as young people, as middle-aged people, if we can't respect older adults, how are we going to respect our future selves?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm glad you said that.
So I guess, on a personal note, what are some of your favorite activities to do to improve your lifespan?
Well, I struggle too, right? It's hard to, we can talk the talk. It's more difficult to walk the walk, of course. So at times I do better than others. Some of the things that I feel best about is a couple of years ago, I really cut out a lot of sugar. I cut down on inflammatory foods. And, a lot of people are running into trouble with food. They need to go to gluten-free. They need to cut out dairy. So back to the importance of having quality of life physically. What we are, what we eat. You've heard that.
Yeah.
We are what we eat. And I love that there's kind of a revolution now. My daughter, for example, and a lot of people her age are really looking at clean food. No processed foods. Again, not eating inflammatory foods, rather. So having anti-inflammatory foods, more of a plant-based diet. All of those things are really good for our bodies and minds, and allow us to have more time in the day and more energy. It doesn't. Some of those processed foods and too much sugar and having the ups and downs that sugar and really heavy foods, the burden it places on our body, it makes us sluggish and all of those things. And so we don't have time to go back to the carving out time for reflection and for meditation and things like that. Maybe we don't sleep very well. So personally, that's one thing that really made me feel good was trying to be, I will say, more mindful about what I eat, trying to keep it cleaner. Another favorite thing that I do that, again, has made me feel a lot better is I have a standing desk here on campus. And, when I go home at the end of the day, I feel so much better. I don't have nearly the neck problems and some, slumping problems that I had before. I don't have some of the back issues that I used to have. I thought it would be very difficult I wondered if it would be difficult for me to concentrate standing up because I had never worked that way. And I had no trouble at all transitioning to that. So that's another one of my favorite things, standing. And of course, I have a chair so I can sit down if I need to. Let's see, what are some other things? I have a rescue dog, and he loves to walk. And so I walk him every day, or we jog, or we hike. We go out to trails, Two Rivers or Busick, and get that fresh air, spend time outdoors, let the sun warm me up. Those are some of my favorite things that I do. And I do meditate. I do that as an individual. I do it on my own. But I'm also really happy to have a ritual with other people. I think most of us will agree that during COVID, when everything was shut down, a lot of us experienced isolation. And so I have always really valued social groups. And it just doesn't have to be a big group. I don't mean big parties or great big get-togethers, but finding your people, the right fit for you, so that you feel like you have support, you feel like you're understood, you can share things with them. So finding like-minded people, even if it's just one or two or three other people, that's really important. So I'm really happy now that I have a meditation group or a Sangha that I can meet with on Saturdays. And I can do that in person or via Zoom. I never thought I would say that. I never thought I would say that I could feel connected to people through a screen. But we take what we can get these days, right?
Yeah.
And then also, I rely on my traditional religious background, and just recently I've decided to start attending masses again on Sunday. And it's just nice because I'm familiar with that routine, it's nice to be there with other people and, again, to walk away with another good message that lots of other people have heard about how to be a better person. So, yeah, those are some of the things that are most important to me that I think really improves my quality of life. And I feel like I'm kind of putting money in the bank, so to speak, for my future by doing all of these things.
So I'm just processing everything you say, because I can relate to almost every one of them.
Great.
And just going back to the food, because I've kind of been just more mindful with what I choose to eat.
Yeah.
Because I've realized that the less you eat, the better. Because if you have what I did in the past, basically a meal for either breakfast or dinner, you're just gonna feel awful afterwards. You're just gonna at least how I'm more unmotivated after I have a meal like that.
Yes.
If I have something like a burrito from Chipotle, if I'm gonna do that, it has to be on a night where I have nothing else planned.
Right.
Because the thing is, the less you eat, the more energized you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I discovered, and I was oh yeah, I do more work this way. I feel better when I'm this way.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, just curious, what kind of foods would you recommend?
Yeah. So my daughter, she's living at home right now, but she's about to study abroad, and she didn't really have enough time to get a job. And so we said, well, if you're going to be living at home before you study abroad, you can meal plan, grocery shop, and you can cook for us. So she's really great at preparing food. And so she has been looking at all of these healthy recipes. So she makes muffins, for example, these breakfast muffins. And again, it will be, gluten-free, oat flour or something like that. So again, she's using ingredients that are anti-inflammatory. Carrots or zucchini will go into those muffins. Again, trying to have more raw foods and natural foods and real foods. She'll use coconut sugar or something like that instead of, refined, bleached. Well, I guess sugar isn't bleached, flour is bleached, but she won't use any of those processed or bleached, kinds of sweeteners or flours. So that's certainly something. What else? Again, just eating, salads, of course. But there are also some really good stews, sweet potatoes, and again, trying to just letting it be broth instead of trying to thicken it with, again, something like flour that would be inflammatory or, make you more sluggish. What are some other things we really enjoy? Dark chocolate. And of course, there are pockets of centenarians, people who are 100 and over around the world. Have you ever heard of blue zones?
I haven't.
Okay.
What is that?
Well, so Dan Buettner and National Geographic, probably 15 years ago by now, they traveled the world and they found these pockets of, places in the world of people who were 100 or over. And so they said, "What's your secret?" And of course they said, "Secret? We don't know. What are you talking about? We just live our lives." And so, as a good kind of like anthropologist would do, they spent time with these people and tried to figure out what it was that they were doing, that they'd lived that long and they were that healthy. And so, there's one group in Italy, they swear that if you have 4 ounces of wine a day, that's really good for you. And there are certain antioxidants in it. And so, yeah, I mean, the dark chocolate, getting to have a little bit of wine, never too much. Everything should be in moderation. Yeah, just like you were saying, sometimes it's what we eat that makes us sluggish. Sometimes it's also the amount, of course, that we eat. So if we can eat less, then we put our bodies through less turmoil, really, to try to digest all of that. Again, in Western culture, we don't take naps during the day. If we ate a big lunch and then we took a nap and then we came back to work later, that would be one thing, but that's not our culture. We're expected to, keep on going and kind of have that 8 to 5 routine.
Are naps good? Because I've heard I guess kind of mixed messages on it. Like some people say it's bad, some people say it's good. So what's your opinion on naps?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I know what research says, and I know from my own personal experience, everybody should get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. We know that, and research says, and it makes all the sense to me, that the more we can align with the lightness, darkness, sun and moon, those circadian rhythms, it's best to be in sync. So that makes all the sense in the world to me. However, I also know a lot of people who a 15-minute nap can completely energize them. It helps them just shut down the stress that has accumulated, and they feel completely rejuvenated and ready to go again after a nap. Not all people are like that, though. So I think it really is, up to the individual to try to get to know their bodies and what works for them. I used to have a terrible time sleeping, even at night. And yeah, I would say that meditation, having a mantra, that has helped me sleep so much better. A lot of people will, when they can't sleep, they will get up and they'll turn on the TV. They'll look at their phones. And so, I mean, we know that blue light just wakes us up. It just stimulates everything, and it really messes up those circadian rhythms. So you should not do that if you cannot sleep.
Yeah.
But what I find is really helpful for me is, and this thought came pretty naturally to me, actually. When I was having trouble sleeping not long ago, I guess that little voice in my head that, kind of just speaks sometimes, said, well, there's no place you'd rather be right now. You wouldn't want to have to be doing anything else right now. You wouldn't want to have to, be cleaning the kitchen or teaching a class or driving. So it's fine. You're here, you're resting. And then, saying a mantra and just relaxing. And then I fell asleep. So not fighting it, I think is really important. I can actually take a nap now, and especially if the sun is coming in, I love that. I think it's important I think that's an element of self-care,
Yeah.
Which we talk so much about these days. It's a shame that we have to talk so much about it because what that means is that we have spent a lot of time, too busy and not taking time and not slowing down. And so now we have to, trend about self-care. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. And see, I'm kind of at a crossroads with that because I'm like, there's a part of me that like wants to slow down and just take my time. But then it's just, I know this culture here in America says otherwise and says that I have to, be as busy as possible and find a job immediately like after I graduate. And I was actually had this thought yesterday, like, because I mean, of course, everybody should strive to be a good worker,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess not necessarily a workaholic.
Right. Yeah, so work-life balance.
Yeah.
That is very important. As a Gen Xer, I was born in 1971. Women were told you can have it all. You can absolutely have it all. You can be a wife, a mother, you can have a career, you can do all of these things. And that was great news to us because a lot of our mothers were told you really should be a wife and a mother. You don't count on having a career. So we thought that was great news, but we also realized and started telling the next generation of women, you can't really have it all. I mean, you can try, but you're always going to feel like you come up a little bit short in everything. So I think this relates to simplifying our lives. We don't always have to buy into what society says that we have to do. I know in advising students here at MSU, some of them are in such a hurry. They want to graduate early, or they won't consider slowing down, taking fewer hours because they're working or because they're helping care for someone. They just want to try to get it all done. And I just always try to say, I understand. When I was in college, I tried to figure out how to graduate early too. But you know what? There's no reason. There's no point. Simplify, slow down. Sometimes I tell them, I use the spin of the, don't speed. So I tell them, arrive alive.
Yeah.
So literally, what's the point of pushing it all and doing everything if you just burn the candle at both ends? And yeah, you graduate, but you're so stressed out that you have no motivation to look for that job. We've got to slow down.
Yeah, that's giving me anxiety because like I'm graduating this semester and this whole semester has just been like hectic and like I haven't had like time to like look at like other jobs yet.
Right.
And so I'm just like extremely stressed this
Right.
semester.
Right.
And I feel like when I do graduate, I will be burned out. Like I don't even want like I probably will just like sleep for like a month after I graduate.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And, we can rush and then sleep and rush and sleep. And you're doing this, right? Or you're up and down. You're
Yeah.
up and down. Again, it's kind of like when you give your body a lot of bad food and you make it, you're crashing. You're hilltopping, you're crashing. You're hilltopping, you're crashing. Same thing that happens when we drink coffee, drink alcohol, drink coffee, drink alcohol. It's so much better to try to have an even balance, to have fewer hilltops and valleys. So the message is out there to simplify, but it's not very easy to do. But it is great advice, and it would ensure more quality in your life course. It just really would.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How do you, meditation might be the key, right? You try to block out all the expectations of the world. You try to connect with yourself. And if that means telling people that you're not going to be in a hurry, if that means telling them I am going to take an extra year, before I graduate, we have to find a way to be able to do that.
How impactful is positivity on aging? Because I know, like, I've known like kind people like age well. Because I have like friends, like really kind friends, right, that are in their 30s, but they actually look like they're 18.
Uh-huh.
And I know people in their 40s who look like the same age that they were like when they were in their 20s. So
Yeah.
what's your I guess opinion on that?
It's funny. The first thing that came into my mind is not the most relevant thing, but the first thing that came into my mind is that it takes so much more effort and more muscles are involved in frowning than in smiling.
Really?
Yes, I've read that a million times. Yeah, the power of positivity should not be underestimated at all. Mindset, I think, in my opinion, is 99% of anything. We always have a choice of what we're thinking, and what we think, literally affects the next thing we think and the next thing we do and the way our brains work and the way our bodies feel. So when we complain and say negative things, we're headed down that road. It's this downward step or a downward spiral. When we try to frame things more positively, we have more hope. We smile more. And you're creating, better future moments. So mindset is, I think, so much of it. Again, that's why I'm so concerned about ageism. To go back to what you said about respecting our future selves, if we are afraid of aging, if we do not like older adults, if we do not like wrinkles, if we do not like it when people walk slowly, if we do not like it when they search for words, if we do not like hearing people tell the same stories over again or sharing, nuggets of wisdom, if we don't like all of those things, then we are just setting ourselves up to not like ourselves later. The only alternative to aging, of course, is death. Yeah. So if we don't die young, then we're all going to age. We all have that in common. So imagine building a house for yourself. Would you build it out of poor materials? Would you build it so that it wouldn't make it through the wind? Would you build it so that it's not attractive, has no curb appeal? Well, when you're building your life for your future self, don't you want to invest the best thoughts and invest the best knowledge to become an older adult? We in education focus a lot on development, of course. So we know about child development and adolescent development, and we call it adult development. And a lot of classes will barely touch on old age. And we tend to think that we do all of our development in terms of, motor skills, cognitive development, even your identity. Maybe your identity is developed by the time you're in, early adulthood. We don't think a whole lot about whether and what kind of development there might be in later life. And there are actually quite a few things that we could look forward to. Maybe you've heard about, it's called socio-emotional selectivity theory. And this kind of relates to simplifying our lives, right? All of this is connected. Socio-emotional selectivity theory is practiced more by older adults. They've been alive for a while. They've seen a lot of things come and go. they've run with the crowd, they've been with the trends, they've tried to conform, keep the pace, all of those things, and pretty soon they say, wow, I am just going to simplify my life. I'm going to do only things that I like to do. I'm going to spend time with only the people that I feel really good spending time with. And I'm going to start saying no to some things. And so, I think that's an important key. If we could start doing that earlier, we would probably stress our bodies and our minds a lot less. So we can look forward to becoming stronger in that, socio-emotional selectivity. We can look forward to playing certain roles for people who are younger than us, like being a peacemaker. Saying, I've been around for a while. I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I've seen these similar things, and you can share your experience. We can all leave a legacy behind if we're intentional enough to do so. So if we take the time when we're meditating or when we're reflecting, journaling, practicing gratitude, if we take the time to say, what do I want to leave behind? Well, start trying to build that thing you want to leave behind right now. It's never too early to start trying to, again, be that wisdom giver or that, peacemaker, or to live in a way that when you do pass away, that people will say, I want to live like that. I do always want to lend a hand, or I do always want to be a good listener, or I do want to be a great champion, cheer people on. There are a lot of things to look forward to in later life.
Yeah. What's like a major risk that everybody kind of needs to cut out of their lives in order to age well?
Right. So I'm going to say three distinct things. Smoking. So we know that tobacco and any kind of cigarettes that have a lot of carcinogens and things like that, it's the single worst thing we can do to our bodies. And our brains, too, our minds, because we become addicted. And so, we give up control of, how our brains are functioning.
What about vaping?
If there are carcinogens in it, and I know there's a lot of varieties of vaping. And again, I'm not an expert in those, but anytime, like a cigarette has something like, a traditional cigarette has something like 200, other additives that are carcinogenic. And so if whatever you're vaping, you should always know what the ingredients are. You should always know what's in there. Vaping has kind of brought up a whole new area we have to allow enough time to go by to see what kind of health effects there are. So anyway, if they're carcinogens, we do know that smoking is so very bad on the body. It increases your risk for just about every chronic disease, as well as cancers and things like that. The second thing is overeating and obesity. We, again, just think about COVID. A risk factor for a poor prognosis when you have COVID, the original COVID, was obesity. Your immune system is just not as strong. And, you can end up with systemic conditions. So, from a public health perspective, we know that smoking and obesity are really bad for us. Can cut our lives short or can lead to a lot of diseases that we will have for the rest of our lives. The third thing might kind of surprise you. It's ageism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ageism. So do not participate in ageism.
Because it's the negative mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do that to ourselves?
Yeah. And I guess, like with the whole stereotype of a cranky old person, I know that's a stereotype, but like for older adults who are kind of cranky or whatever, like I would assume that the reason why they're like that is because of their own ageism and like how they always treated themselves.
Yeah. Research absolutely shows that if you dread getting older, if you fear it, if you're averse to older adults,
then you're just gonna have a miserable time.
Then you're gonna be miserable.
Yeah.
You indeed will hate being older. You won't be good at it. You will be miserable. So
the only thing that you can do is just accept it, and you'll have a good life.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, think about what roles you can step into, further ways that you can develop as an older adult, what you can give back, to the world, the legacy you can leave behind.
Yeah. And the age that we're in now, because I know people are saying that the future is bleak, and I guess. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I think that's something that people always say, and then we just kind of like adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the best way to deal with it, is just don't kind of like feed into that mindset. I mean, things will always kind of be challenging, I guess. But like, I don't know, how do you feel about the future, I guess, and we'll be, I guess, 30 to 50 years from now.
Right.
Yes. I guess the health effects that will, possible health effects that might happen later too.
Right. I mean, the most significant world event right now is Russia and Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
So I met someone just yesterday who was born in right on the border of Romania and Ukraine, and she still has family that's in Ukraine. But thank goodness, again, they live, I think, on the western end rather than the eastern, that borders Russia. But so yeah, when I think about things like that, I'm very worried about the future. And you're right, all generations have said, the future is bleak, because there are always whether it's cultural wars,
or new problems,
or real wars, right? There are scary things, but I think what we can do to filter some of that is, again, simplify our lives. So decide on, this is just one example, decide on one source of information, not 50 different sources of information, and don't have it streaming into you, into your home, into your ears, into your head 24 hours a day. So, I know a lot of people will switch between, the major news channels, Fox and CNN and MSNBC, and going back and forth between all of these news channels that are on all of the time. And they're not really news anymore. It's opinion of somebody else's opinion about what someone else said. And some of that overload, I don't think we were built for that overload. I'm not a neurologist, but it just seems to me that that kind of information overload is not good for us at all. So again, I think this goes back to simplifying. I can share with you that older adults, kind of frail older adults, those who are starting to have cognitive decline, especially those in memory care units, those who have dementia and Alzheimer's disease, when they're living in those facilities, the staff will literally keep that bad news away from them, because they become so anxiety-ridden and so very worried. I think we can take a hint from that. If it bothers children, if it bothers people with some cognitive decline, we have to acknowledge that as aware as we seem to be in our middle age and our young age, it's probably still doesn't have the best effect on us either. So I think, we know that things evolve, and again, the 24-hour news channels and the constant social media information and everything just coming at us all the time. I'm not sure that our minds were really made for that. So I think technology has maybe surpassed what we're capable of taking in and processing. You remember when natural disasters have happened or terrorist events have happened, and psychologists advise people, don't watch this for hours on end.
Yeah.
You can't drown in this. It's very sad. It's terrible, of course, but you can't just drown in this. It's not healthy. Yeah.
That's why I still watch the news, but not as much, and I don't even use Facebook anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just a lot of negative information on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just the information that comes out. Then there's the secondary responses to all of it and all the reactions. And then there's is this true or not?
Yeah.
And well, of course it's true. No, it's not true.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just going back to just like prepping, like just having a good life. Like I want to choose. I want to spend my time wisely. Like, and I feel like social media is kind of a waste of time.
Wow. Minutes, if not hours, can go by before you realize how much time you've just been staring at a screen.
Exactly, because like in the past, sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm just going to be on it for 5 minutes, and then it'll be like over an hour. And like, I mean, I've had that experience also, just like with the internet too. Like when I first got a computer, like when I was a kid, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be on it for like 30 minutes or so, and just like 3 hours pass.
Right. Yeah, because it's so easy also to accidentally go down some rabbit hole because you've clicked on something and now you're onto a new topic and that leads you to something else, and then pretty soon maybe you forgot why you even started looking to begin with. I know that happens to me at work. I will leave an email message to look up something, and then but what will happen is I'll get some other notification, which I start paying attention to. And then 2 hours later, I'll find that email message that's half drafted. And I'll be like, oh my gosh. So it's hard today to actually start a task, complete a task. Our attention is so very divided, which again, I will leave this up to the neuropsychologists, but that is very difficult on our brains to have all that divided attention, and it can lead to what we in lay terms would just call burnout.
Yeah. I especially have to be careful with it because I have ADHD, so